Hello and welcome to HMG Network, broadcasting live from the Greater Washington, D.C. metropolitan. I am Freeman Bikorwa, and thank you for joining us for another power-packed message of our series, In Pursuit of Justice. Welcome, and today we've got another one of this program that is just here to knock you off your socks. So today's program we are going to discuss on who's who among the Rwanda's disappeared, assassinated, and prisoners of conscience. Ladies and gentlemen, as you have been getting used to it, our program of In Pursuit of Justice, when we talk, and we keep it real, which is why most of you guys are, you usually enjoy this program, but also those who don't want it to be broadcasted. So welcome to all of you guys checking out this program from televisions, radio stations, and certainly those of you following us from the social media. We are super grateful that you're having us. You have us today, hanging out with you all. Bring your questions, your comments, and all the above, because we want to hear from you guys. And before we get started, I want to just set a few rules. Those of you joining us specifically from the social medias, you have seen how we get hacked plenty of times. But today, in case we get any issues, simply go back to either Aglan website or HMG main website so you can replag all over again. If you still have any issues with that, we would simply just run the backup copy, because we're running everything with no interruption on our end at the studio. And with that in mind, again, I really am super grateful that we're having this conversation, that we get ready to have this conversation with all of you guys here. And to be just a little bit more specific, we are going to profile some of the notable individuals and groups falsely imprisoned in Rwanda, as well as those who have been subjected to forced disappearance, assassinations, inside and outside Rwanda. And with me today is my amazing colleagues that we constantly share this program with. We have our brother Claude Gatebuke, who is the executive director for the African Great Lakes Action Network, and our queen Nadine Kazuba, who's also going to be presenting this amazing program. And with that in mind, allow me to ask my brother Claude Gatebuke to jump in and give you a hello before we get started. Claude, my brother, can you hear me? Good morning.
Good morning, Freeman. Good morning to our audience, and good evening and good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you for joining us, and just wanted to ask that you, please, if you don't mind, share social media. If you're following on YouTube, share the links with others so that they can follow on YouTube. And if you're following on Facebook, share it on your walls. In addition, we want to thank. I want to thank my co-presenters, Freeman and HMG, for the platform. Before we get started, wanted to let everybody know just quickly what Rwanda is. Rwanda is a very small country in Central East Africa. It's located between Congo, Tanzania, Burundi, and Uganda. In order to find it on the map, you got to look for Tanzania or Congo. It's a very small country. It's very well known for the genocide that took place in 1994, and also known as one of the last few countries with the endangered species of the mountain gorillas. And today's conversation is not about the gorillas, and it's not about the genocide. It's actually about post-genocide Rwanda. What is happening in post-genocide Rwanda since the takeover of the Rwandan Patriotic Front, which is the RPF. You'll hear us referring to it as the RPF. Is the party in power in Rwanda that took over Rwanda in 1994 at the end of a 4-year war. On the heels of the genocide. The 4-year war culminated in a genocide. So the conversation today, the structure is we're going to highlight some cases. There's so many cases of injustice in Rwanda, literally hundreds of thousands of cases, if not millions. And we're only gonna, actually it is millions considering that what we're gonna be talking about today. And in today's conversation, we're just gonna highlight some of the individuals and some of the groups. So it's just certain cases that we're gonna talk about, but they're worth noting. We're gonna have a conversation about these, and my colleague Nadine's gonna give us a little bit more about the structure, the detailed structure. But the main structure is we're gonna start with the presentation, and then we'll get to engage with you. Please do send your questions, comments on this conversation, and we look forward to interacting with you. And without further ado, I want to invite and welcome my fabulous co-presenter, Nadine Kazuba. Welcome. It's a pleasure to be presenting with you again.
Thank you so much. Thank you, HMG Studio. Thank you, Freeman and Claude Gatebuke, for actually giving us again this opportunity to talk about injustices that are being committed on the people of Rwanda. So post-genocide Rwanda has been characterized by a lot of injustices going on, different kinds, killings, disappearance, suppression of freedom of speech. So today, we are going to talk about some few individuals. I mean, I'm saying it's not few individuals, but it's a few of the many people that have faced these injustices. But before we start, I would like to thank our sponsors, the Black Star News, Aglan, and Friends of Congo. So we try to put these individuals in categories because they all have different talents, and some are just ordinary people. So category one is for ordinary people that have actually become victims of this injustice in Rwanda. And they are ordinary people who also made the headlines. And then we have category two of Rwandan artists who have been murdered, who have disappeared, or who have been imprisoned for no reason. And then we have category three for journalists. So in Rwanda, we have some journalists who are courageous enough to step up and go where the cameras of Rwandan government don't want them to go. So most of these journalists, what they covered is injustices that were being committed on the ordinary Rwandans. Those injustices, like I say, include killings, including like disappearance and all kinds of things, like all kinds of injustices that we're gonna be talking about them. And then the last category is special category. We call it special category because it's a category of the people who were activists or who are just unknown people, or people who also are a part of our families, people that we actually know. And they never, like most of them, like nobody really know them, but we just learned about them through our friends and stuff like that. And those people also faced those injustices. Some of them have disappeared, some of them have been killed, but their stories really never made the headlines. So we also gonna be talking a few of those individuals and what happened to them. So we're gonna go ahead and start with the part one for ordinary people. And I will go ahead and give this to Claude Gatebuke to start with the first victim of the ordinary people that made the headlines.
My apologies. I'm having a little bit of technical goof up. So maybe I can, while I work through it, if I can hand it to you, Freeman. Start with Rashid Hakuzimana. That way I can work on my technical issues here, please.
Thank you. Thank you, my brother Claude. for those of you guys who, just like Claude was mentioning, what's been happening in Rwanda, it's unconscionable, especially for the people who are constantly being harassed. These are ordinary people just like you and I. They just want to have a good life. And one of those guys, or one of those people, is Rashid Hakuzimana. And this gentleman has been one of the people who have been constantly profiled by the government. But currently he's in jail. He's literally in jail right now for speaking up. He's a politician, but they call him a politician wannabe. Even though he's been in politics for as long as we can remember, really. They can put his image there so you guys can get a chance to see him. So Rashid is one of those politicians. He's been wanting to unite the Rwandese people, specifically the president of Rwanda. He's been doing the very best that he could to unify him and the rest of the political opponent in Rwanda. And consequently, given that it's been one of those pretty much when you're joining the things without any blessings from the government, you tend to have some problems. You tend to be in trouble with the government. So Rashid is one of those people known for speaking up. On the street, he speaks on behalf of the poor people, on behalf of those who can't really go what they call up high. That means if you don't have any connection with the higher ranking official governments, you can't get any justice within Rwanda. So he would go towards the people like vendors, street vendors, women who sell things like some tomatoes on the street. Those who are literally like hustling. Just picture in New York City, someone just try to make a living, getting their own little papers here and there, some license, or oftentimes no license to run a hustle. And he speak on behalf of these people. And for those of you guys who are not aware, in Rwanda, we don't really have organized businesses, even though the government has really worked so hard to put it in a such way that there is some sort of organization. But an average person cannot afford to get all the requirements in order for them to be like legally licensed, mainly because they just don't have any resources. We're talking about money, connection, and means, even the education to ensure that the paperwork, the business paperwork, it's run through. So Rashid has been one of these political figures within Rwanda who's really worked hard to work on behalf of these people. He became popular in recent months after he launched one of his YouTube channel, and it's called and the YouTube channel is called the Rashid TV, I do believe. And where he literally would speak it like it is. He speak of the issues, primarily political issues. He analyzes events, and he speak on behalf of the the poor people within the country. And he used to criticize, bluntly criticizes, or used to criticize, since he's no longer doing that, everything that he deemed unacceptable within the country, and be it done by the government officials or some more powerful people within Rwanda. And consequently, he was warned by what's equivalent to the FBI. It's called the Rwandan Internal Investigation. He has been summoned multiple times before he was imprisoned. And of course, when he was warned not to go that route, meaning not to talk about any high-ranking political figures within Rwanda, like the president of the country, the ministers, some of these individuals who can actually make your life miserable within the country. He was warned multiple times, and he kept on talking until recently, when he just decided to talk about stories like the Rwandan President Habyarimana's ex-wife, that she should go home to their property within Rwanda. He literally started talking about the issues you would never hear within the country, within Rwanda itself, and that literally gave him a premium ticket business class towards the jail. It's called Mageragere. It's one of those jails where when your life is there, it's miserable. And I'm quite sure we will actually be telling you some other people who are currently in jail for speaking up on behalf of the ordinary people and who just want a situation within the country to change. And thus, being a part of the haters, being a part of those who should really find themselves in jail for speaking up the truth. So one of the things that he used to share was how when he previously was incarcerated, because he was incarcerated before, he made an attempt. He made an attempt to bring together the then president, Bizimungu Pasteur. He used to be ex-president, and President Kagame. This man was tortured. And when we talk about torture in Rwanda, some of you guys think that it's waterboarding kind of torture. It goes beyond that. There are plenty of testimonies, even the Human Rights Watch, Red Cross, a lot of these non-government organizations have been documenting that. We also do have those documentation of torture. So he was tortured and his life was made miserable. And he also displayed so much torture marks on his the physical body. You can see what they have done to him, and you could clearly see what an experience, a horrific experience that he has, that he has actually lived within the Rwandan jail. And to his point, he used to say, I came from hell. And there isn't anything that can be done to me while outside of the jails than the hell within the country. The hell he was referring to is the Rwandan jails. These are not the kind of jails we have here in the United States or those of you in Europe. These are horrific jails. And we can agree that oftentimes, normally the purpose of someone being taken to a prison, it's so that you could actually be helped to re-enter the community all over again. Not for your life to get messed up even worse, or you to become actually a criminal because of the treatment, the torture, and all kinds of human rights violation that gets to be given to you as the consequences of just being in the wrong lane at the wrong time. And so Rashid is one of these individuals also who's really, he's going to the jails for the second times, and this time with no mercy. Because what he has done was something that he was warned multiple times not to do, especially given that he's in Rwanda, that he was already in Rwanda. We speak freely right now, given that we are outside of Rwanda. This kind of broadcast, this kind of talk, rhetoric, it's not accepted in the country. Even though most of you donors from all over the world who literally see Rwanda as the Singapore of Africa, life is different. Life is different. There is no political opposition in Rwanda. When you dare to speak, just like Rashid, you literally receive consequences, harsh consequences, horrific consequences, including torture. And Rashid has been one of those witnesses. He spoke about it, even though there is a way that in Rwanda, when you've been done wrong, you sort of like have to marinate it. You have to dress it in a such way that you do not publicly speak of names, for example, of those responsibles, because you get there are retributions. They literally will go after you all over again. And this is one of the things that we want to bring to your attention, because Rwanda, that all of you are helping today. Are you encouraging us to get beyond the genocide? Even after these 27 years, genocide is being utilized as one of those tools to repress people, to make sure that everybody's muzzled, that we don't talk, we don't speak, not unless we remain in the lane that's been given to us. So today Rashid is in jail and has reported of being tortured again, as we had said, and he hasn't been sentenced. Well, let's put it this way. There is a sham trial. just like the one of Paul Rusesabagina, that he's going through just like everyone else who's, who get caught up in the middle of these horrific experiences. Either if you're speaking up as an activist or a political opposition, it's a standard. You have to go to jail if you're just not cooperating. And he's going through that. But the worst part of it, Rwandan, usually they give you a jail sentence before you go to jail. It doesn't matter whether you know people. You just have to be in the wrong lane. If you're not speaking, if you don't have the same rhetoric as the Rwandese government, you immediately are a candidate to receive those treatment. So Claude, my brother, I think I can probably just speak a whole lot of it, but I do not want to have the microphone all by myself. I'd like to go right ahead and give it back to you briefly, and you keep it moving, my brother. Thank you.
Thank you, Freeman. I hope that the audience understands the type of injustice that Rwandan people are really going through. There's something you said about somebody being sentenced before they even go to court. And it reminds me, a few years ago, I was on a Nigerian TV station, and we were talking about the election in Rwanda. So I was like, the Americans and the French were competing, and they were like, oh, the French were like, oh, we're so quick. We go, when we have our elections, we go vote, and the next day, we have results, and then the Americans were like, no, we're better. Mm-hmm. We have elections, and the same day you have results.
That's right.
In Rwanda, I was like, in Rwanda, it's even better because you have an election and you already know who's gonna win before there's even an election. So it's the same way they do the prisons. Like they arrest people, they already know that they're gonna keep them. There's no sense even in the trials and everything. So what's happening to Rashid, Hakuzimana, and others that we're gonna talk about, and if I can just jump in before I hand it back to Nadine, there are two cases I want to talk about quickly. You talked about how Rashid speaks about the street vendors. So I want to talk about Theodosi Wamahoro, who is she was a street vendor, and she was attacked. This was in 2016. 28 years old, I believe she was at the time, or 29, and she might have been pregnant if I remember correctly. She was attacked by by security agents. They beat her again in the effort. What you just talked about, the Singapore of Africa, the clean city, the clean Rwanda, and all of that. And they killed her. And when she got killed, it was like a normal thing. Like it's okay to just go out there and kill somebody because they do not want street vendors. They want to keep the city clean for the tourist. And here we have a woman getting beaten and killed. There were reports by Human Rights Watch that Human Rights Watch reports that talked about it. Not many people knew about it. And again, today, the purpose of today's conversation is to highlight some of these cases that may have made headlines, but somehow are lesser known cases than the normal or usual cases that we've seen. Now, the second person I want to talk about before I hand to you, Nadine, is his name is Viateur Mitsindo Viateur. Mitsindo Viateur is a young man. He trains acrobats, and Viateur Mitsindo basically was arrested in November of last year. He was summoned to by local authorities, and he ended up arrested. And for a while, nobody knew where he was. The government of Rwanda did not disclose where he was. So there was a lot of noise, a lot of advocacy, a lot of outcry about him. Where is he? Show us where he is. He went to see authorities and things like that. Then when eventually the government of Rwanda claimed to have him, they never produced him in public. It's been a year, more than a year. It was mid-November of last year when he went into custody. Until today, no one has seen him in public. No one has seen him in court. There's nothing happening on his case, and he's still sitting in pre-trial detention. You don't hold people that long. If somebody's going to lose their freedom, at least there has to be a process, a judicial process to show, whether he's guilty or not. You can't just be sitting in jail while waiting for indefinitely. Now, Mitsindo Viateur was a trainer. He trained young people in acrobatics and sports in general. He was basically a youth leader in various parts of the country. When he went into custody, a number of accusations started popping up, but the things they were accusing him of were things that supposedly he posted on social media. And when you challenge the authorities or supporters of the Rwandan government to, hey, can you show me where he actually, where this is from him? They couldn't. They cannot produce that. But he's still sitting in jail. There's no charges. He has had no charges. He has had no trial. He has not been seen in public, and he's away from the family. And not only that, he's also away from the kids that he trains. So that is the case of Mitsindo Viateur. Again, thankfully, there's a silver lining because he's still alive. And it's not like, Theodosia Mahoro, who was killed. And so today we must continue to speak up and raise awareness on who these people are. Again, in this effort to clean the city or to control what people say or how they act and how they behave, it's unconscionable. And so Nadine, I want to turn it over to you. Apologize for kind of, messing up the order with my technical issues, but thank you, Freeman. And back to you, Nadine.
Yeah, thank you so much, Claude. So the next victim we're going to talk about in this category of ordinary people that made Rwandan headlines is we're going to talk about Idamanje Iryamugwiza. She's a young woman. She's 42 years old. And this year in January, like January 31st, 2021, Idamanje, a mother of 4, and who is also a genocide survivor, she took Rwanda's social media by storm. She did it by launching a YouTube channel and expressing the injustices and repression going on in Rwanda under the RPF government, which is the Rwandan Kagame's government. She spoke powerfully and passionately, and her sharp commentary, delivery, and passion spoke to the hearts and minds of all caring Rwandans. What made her unique and special is that she was living the saying by Ben Franklin that justice will not be served until those who are unaffected are as outraged as those who are. She was privileged by Rwandan standards and was very well. So Idamanje, she was ordinary person, but she had a good life. She was living in one of the good neighborhoods in Kigali. Her children were attending good schools, but the injustices that was being done on Rwandans, she could not just see that happening and kept quiet. So she decided to come up and start speaking out. Among the issues she addressed include the COVID restrictions. Restrictions adverse impact on the population of Rwanda, especially in a country where most people live hand to mouth. So like I say, Rwanda is a small country. Rwanda is a poor country. So when the COVID started, like most of you know, the whole world went into quarantine. So Rwanda also initiated the quarantine restrictions. But like us, like people who live in the Western countries, at least we were able to get some support from the government. In the United States, we got there some stimulus packages. And I believe also in the other countries that have a better economic, that has good economy, the people were able to get the support from their governments. So in Rwanda, people were put in quarantine without help, and they were still expected to pay the rents. And those who own businesses were still expected to pay the taxes. And how are you going to do all that without working? So by looking at that, Idamanje was furious about the Rwandans' decisions. And the excuse of Rwanda was that, oh, we are helping people, we're going to be giving you food. And the type of food that were being given to the Rwandans, it's something called kawunga, which is kawunga is like some kind of a cornmeal. I would say it's like cornmeal, like if you can call it that way, like in the United States, I think that's what we will call it, because it's like grounded maize. So kawunga and some kind of beans. And I think most of us who are from Rwanda, we've seen a lot of videos of the Rwandans complaining about that type of food that were being given to them, because most of them was spoiled. They were complaining how the beans that were being delivered to them, it was already spoiled. And if you have to cook the beans that was given to you that could not even really feed the entire family, it would take you like a whole day. And Rwandans, the majority of the people, they use charcoal. So the charcoal you have to buy to cook those beans is probably, the price is higher than the beans that you are being given. So all that, the whole COVID restrictions and the insufficiency of the food that was being given to them, bad food, it wasn't really helping any Rwandans. And actually Rwandans started to suffer more of hunger than, they're being killed more by hunger than being killed by the COVID. So another issue she talked about was how the government of Rwanda uses genocide as a political weapon of blackmail and a conduit of injustices, that the government of Rwanda has turned the genocide into a commercial enterprise, but does not benefit genocide survivors and instead exploits them. She also complained about the bones on display in genocide memorials. She complained that those bones should be buried and victims be honored. And this is also something that we can talk about, because in Rwandan culture, we do not display the dead bodies. When your loved ones are deceased, you honor them, you bury them with respect. But there have been so many complaints about genocide survivors, complaining about how the display of their loved ones in the genocide memorials, it's actually something that is very disrespectful to the lives of their loved ones. She also called out the absence of Rwanda's President Kagame during COVID-19 times. And also, this is something that probably a lot of people who are not from Rwanda don't know about, but during COVID, when the COVID started 2020, the president of Rwanda disappeared for a long time. I think it went on for like a year, maybe or maybe more. Like as all other world leaders were on the televisions or, comforting their people, telling them how to carry themselves during the epidemic. The Rwandan president was nowhere to be found. He never spoke a word. And I felt like during that time, it seemed like Rwandan people felt like orphans, like they had no leaders. And also the Rwandan government itself, they never said anything about his whereabouts. So that was also something that was going on. And actually, the rumors started circulating that he might have died, and they have been keeping that a secret. So she called out the absence of Rwandan President Kagame during COVID times because there was so much going on. There was economic crisis because of COVID, and people were also facing some kind of people were facing a lot of police brutality and stuff like that. And the president wasn't really saying anything much about that. She courageously raised issues of the closed political space in Rwanda, extrajudicial detentions, torture, kidnapping, and killings of Rwandan citizens. Just like Freeman and Claude mentioned above about those 3 victims that we just talked about, yeah, all these are the things that are happening in Rwanda. It's not a secret. Killings are going on. Also, there's another important issue she talked about. She talked about education, how the education in Rwanda is very poor. And this is something that started with, of course, imagine Rwanda, 1994. The country is coming out of the war. A lot of people have died. The genocide is just over. Of course, we're going to have a lack of educators because people have died and a lot of Rwandans went also into exile. So we're going to have lack of the educators, teachers, professors, and stuff like that. Also, after 1994, for some reason, Rwandan government had a conflict with the France, and the president of Rwanda was totally against anything that was French. So they decided to change the Rwandan system, the education system, which when we were in Rwanda, when we were young, when we were raised in a French system, pretty much. Our school system was in French, same as our parents. So like right after the colonialism, after Rwanda got independence, we adopted Belgian school system, which is pretty much in French. So the Rwandan government, after they took over, they wanted to change the system into English. So we're changing system to the English. We also having a lack of enough educators, teachers, and professors. The Rwandan education system went into crisis. So it's like something you just happened to wake up one day and decided to change the system without proper transition to educate, to train those teachers who are going to be teaching in the English system. Because the teachers we had, they only spoke French and Kinyarwanda. So whoever was left there, they could only teach in French and Kinyarwanda. So, and apparently what started happening, they started importing teachers from outside. And of course, what kind of quality, the quality is always the best than the quantity. So the best teachers were only going to the international schools in Rwanda to teach the children of the elites, because they are the only ones who are able to afford those kind of international schools. And then also the ones who probably want to get paid less, they will just go to those public schools where the ordinary children are attend. So Idamanje complained about the whole change in system where there was no qualified teachers to teach in English languages, to teach the children of Rwanda. And then also on the top of that, most of the Rwandan elites, like those generals, those people in the government, their children, if they're not in international schools in Rwanda, they send their children abroad. They attend schools in the United States. They attend schools in Europe. Like most of you, or if you don't know that, the Kagame's children attended schools in the United States. So Idamanje was furious about that, how their children are being educated in better schools abroad and international schools, but the ordinary children in Rwanda are just attending schools where there is a poor quality of education. So in her commentary, before being arrested, she called on Rwandan people to peacefully march to the presidential palace and demonstrate and express their grievance. Leading up to her arrest, her teenage son was kidnapped and held overnight by security forces. Thanks to quick intervention on Rwandan social media, the son was returned to his mother the next morning. Her YouTube channel lasted a total of 2 weeks before she was arrested by Rwandan police in a violent raid on her home. There was a video that she posted when they came to arrest her. Like, it was a brutal arrest. Yeah, they were pretty much, it was like a forceful, it was a forceful arrest. I'm not sure if the studio can play the video, maybe not. Okay. Yes, so that was terrible, terrible, especially on a young mother who is there speaking up, advocating for the Rwandan citizens. It's indeed something that most of us Rwandans, we were shocked seeing that video and how she was and how they came to for her arrest. So during the initial days after her arrest, she claimed that she had been handcuffed, shackled during her detention. Her torture went as far as not allowing to her self-care or releasing handcuffs during her periods. And I mean, as a woman, I think that's something like, it's very heartbreaking. To the point where, I mean, seeing a woman, every woman, you would like to, give yourself care when you are in your periods. It's just letting a person appear in the court like that. It's very sad. She requested a public trial, and the government of Rwanda refused. In September of this year, she was sentenced to 15 years in prison, and in prison and fine of $2,000 for inciting violence and public uprising, denigrating genocide artifacts, spreading rumors, and violent assault on policemen. All these were based on comments she made on her YouTube channel. Her conviction proves many of the things she called out, including repression and dictatorship and the government using the genocide to exploit its survivors and turning it both into a commercial enterprise and weaponizing it against anyone who speaks up on the Kagame and the RPF repression. In another act of courage, after seeing bias from the court, Idamanje decided to boycott the court and was not present when she was sentenced. These judicial proceedings in Rwanda are tainted with bias and are a travesty of justice. So this is the story of the Idamanje, and so it's very tragic. And I'm gonna go ahead and hand it over to Claude Gatebuke and this is going to be the next part of this broadcast. It's gonna be the part of artists who have been, who also face these type of injustices in Rwanda. But before then, I'll hand it over to Claude Gatebuke so he can give some remarks.
Yeah, Idamanje is a very courageous woman. And as you said, I love the quote that you used, that justice would not be served until those who are unaffected are as outraged as the ones who are affected. Because usually being unaffected by justice is a privilege, but injustice is a privilege. And so many privileged people are entitled, and they think they can dictate to the people who are being hurt on how to behave, what to say, tone police them, and all kinds of various things, versus actually seeing the reason why the people behave the way they behave. And when a person has compassion, a person with privilege that has compassion will use their privilege to actually speak up to someone else. So for someone else's injustice. And they understand that an injustice to another person is just inching its way. I'm quoting Jean Bosco Twishirahamwe. He said, when an injustice is happening to your neighbor, it's inching its way toward you. And so no matter how much privilege we have, no matter how much we may think that we're shielded, especially those of us who live in Western countries, we must speak up. And Idamange sent, she is the perfect example. There's others, but she needed nothing. But she saw the injustice and decided not to, she decided she would not be silent, she would not back down, and she would not let the people down. What I think is even more amazing and important about her is that she was willing to lose so much. She has kids, she has a family, she has so much, but in order to get justice, we all have to raise our voices, especially those of us who have privileges, and we don't have a lot to lose. Lastly, on a personal note, during the genocide that you talk about, we're talking about post-genocide Rwanda, but during that genocide, I and my mother were made to dig our own graves. So we would have been buried after we got killed. But there is something absolutely shocking and inhumane that is happening in Rwanda. Is the display of people's remains, the display of bones in genocide memorials that she spoke against. This is a very painful thing to those of us who lost many of our family members in that genocide. Our people, the people who were killed, and so many other people, by the way. So the genocide memorials also are discriminatory. They focus on Tutsi people. The Hutu people who were killed, to this day, you can't even start to talk about burying them. And it's not only against the Rwandan tradition, but it's just inhumane to display people's bones or to stop people from burying their loved ones, to stop people from speaking up. So Idamange was absolutely amazing in that she spoke to all of these issues that every Rwanda thinks about, but is afraid to talk about. Again, she also showed there is no excuse for those of us who have the privileges not to use them to help others. That's what I wanted to really add, because I think it's really important that we all understand, those of us and those who are following this broadcast from whatever part of the world you're in, use your voice, please. Do speak up, because these injustices, just like the fight against apartheid in South Africa was a global fight in yesteryears, just like the fight today for a free Congo. And the fight and the struggle for so many parts of the world in freeing themselves is global. Let's globalize the voice of Idamange. That's what I wanted to add.
Yeah, and also I would like to add on something on Idamange's part. What I'm saying is that Rwanda always be bragging about how they have a lot of like most of the parliament has a lot of women. They have a lot of women in parliament compared to other countries in Africa. And you kind of wonder, what is the purpose? What do those women do if they see something like this being done on a woman, where a woman is even denied to self-care for herself during her periods? And you see those women in parliament keep quiet. So what kind of women are they? And that's one question also, my fellow friends of Africa, my fellow friends of Rwanda, or everybody who's following this broadcast, you should start questioning yourself. Is it like those women in parliaments in Rwanda, are they just there for us to look and just, give praise that, oh, we have a lot of women in Rwandan parliament, where they can't even speak about something like, about injustice like this being committed to their fellow woman. Somebody who is speaking up, actually, they are supposed to be speaking up for Rwandans in the parliament. They are not doing it, but somebody who is ordinary came up and started speaking up, and she gets all this torture on her. And you have all those women in Rwanda just bragging that, we have a lot of Rwandan women in parliament and they're not doing anything. So that's another thing I just wanted to add on this part of Idamange. We can't just be there and say that we have the title of anything.
Queen Nadine, allow me to also interject and just add a little small commentary on our Queen Idamange. This woman, not only she's been courageous, but she literally has she has made sure that the other women, just like Nadine was saying, are being actually acknowledged, advocated for, and consequently, just like Rashid, she has been subjected to all kinds of torture. Literally, all kinds of really heinous torture, some of which we can't even mention here. Not only that, she was also asked not to, she was asked actually to go in the Hashem trial that everyone has to go through. She refused. And to the point that they actually did not have food, in addition to the hygienic products for women during their menstruation time. So food, solitary confinement, not being able to speak to her family, to her children, not allowed to speak to her lawyers, and definitely ensuring that she either complies to what they want her to do or receive a solitary confinement. And right now, as we speak to you guys, she has not been seen ever since she went to prison. Her family members, her children, has been, the cell phone were taken away by the government. Right now, you cannot reach their children, her children, that is. The public is not aware of what's happening with her family members, with her children. And we're talking about children who were still under the age, with the exception of the older one who is 18. The rest of them much younger. So we will really, it would just be inhumane for those of you who are parents, who are who are doing advocacy work all over the world. Just picture your children being utilized as a weapon against you, being utilized to blackmail you. And the government does it all in a hush-hush manners. But with her in particular, the children has been told not to speak to anyone, especially the media, especially advocacy groups. You will not be able to know whether they have any food, whether they go into school, any of that. And this is something that is not acceptable for those of you supporting Rwanda right now, especially when we're talking about human rights violations. Look at those cases. These are very well documented. The Human Rights Watch is aware of most of it, but they have been kicked out of the country. Your embassies, the embassies, and a lot of you guys who have influence, especially donors, countries donating money to Rwanda. We really, really, really would want you to follow up and see what your dollars are doing, what your money is doing in Rwanda. Because most of it is not being utilized the way you think it's supposed to be utilized. Especially when it comes to these incarcerations and harassing the people seeking the betterment of other Rwandan population and citizens. Nadine, that's what I wanted to add on to that, because I love the courage of Idamange. She's really has been one of the inspiration figures who, just like Claude had said, she had everything in the country. A beautiful life, but she just couldn't stand seeing another woman with children in the slums, not being able to eat, being raped in the open, like few cases currently in the court. We're talking about the law enforcement raping women, raping their children, raping little girls in front of their family members. All that she has spoken bluntly, without being afraid, without any sugarcoating of what's been happening. And what do the rest of these women in parliament do? Completely silent. What do the rest of these men are doing? Completely silent. And we want that to stop, ladies and gentlemen. Not because these are Rwandese people, but because we are just human beings. If you cannot see that being done to you, let's say no to Rwanda and Kagame's government also doing that as a part of the everyday just business. It's not even an issue. It's just a part of the culture there right now. Right back to you, our dear Queen Nadine. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Freeman. So let's go ahead and continue the broadcast with the part 2 of this broadcast, which is about the artists in Rwanda who also, some of them died, some of them disappeared, some of them are incarcerated. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to Claude Gatebuke to start with the first victim of this part of the broadcast.
You're muted, brother.
Every time you say we'll go ahead and start with the first, I keep saying I'm gonna do two at the same time. So I'm gonna do the same again this time. This is, I know I'm joking here, but it's actually serious. It's horrible what's happening to talented Rwandans. And you know what? Even those of us that you're looking at here, Nadine's a very talented person, Freeman's a very talented person, but guess what? The Rwandan government does not want us, the RPF and Kagame and his system, they do not want us to either thrive. In fact, one of Kagame's advisors, General James Kabarebe, said it. They do not want us to thrive. They want to come after us. And this is something that they are doing. So talent is being lost. We are fortunate to be outside of Rwanda, but those inside of Rwanda, they are being, just railroaded. You look at these two cases right now. I want to start with the case of a Rwandan poet. His name is Bahati Musa. Bahati is a very talented, is hopefully, I hope he's still alive, a very talented poet. He wrote so many inspiring poems in terms of just uplifting Rwandan people, providing advice. But he also was critical of the government. He saw the injustices happening to people. And suddenly, in February of this year, he was nowhere to be found. It's been almost a year now. In 2 months, it's going to be a year since he disappeared. He's a young man, around 30 years old. And instead of promoting his talent, instead of keeping him, making sure his talent thrives and he does well in the country, because he does not sing praises of the government, they made him pay with disappearing him. And when I say that they disappeared him, in Rwanda, the country is is under such tight control that basically when somebody disappears, it is the government that disappeared them, because for one, there's a surveillance system inside of Rwanda. That surveillance system is so sophisticated. I wrote an article last year and referred to it as more sophisticated than any of the monitoring NSA tools that the US uses. That sophisticated system is they have a way that they monitor every home. Every 10 homes have somebody monitoring those homes. Even when you're traveling inside of Rwanda, they actually, you get to various checkpoints or a border. If you happen to take too long to get to the next destination, they might be like, oh, what happened? We were expecting you like 2 hours ago. So the disappearance of Bahati is the responsibility of the Rwandan government. It's the responsibility of the RPF and the Kagame regime in Kigali, because that system of control and that system of surveillance is very deep. And so the fact that he's missing, Rwandans are missing out on his talent. Rwandans are missing out, and the world, not just Rwandans, the world is missing out on his talent, missing out on his spirit. And this was a loving person. This is somebody that was all inclusive. This is another thing. Rwanda is has a very discriminatory regime. So people who are inclusive, like Idamange that we talked about, like Rashid Hakuzimana that we talked about earlier, Mitsindo Viateur, I mean, when you're training people, athleticism doesn't really have, you don't look at ethnicity. You just, you select people based on talent. So talented people are disappearing, but they're not simply disappearing. The government is actually disappearing them. And so we're missing out on this talent because, and again, they must show where Bahati is. Remember the case of Mitsindo Viateur that I talked about. They disappeared him also. And we'll see even more cases of that in this broadcast. They disappear the people. Then eventually they say, oh, we have them in custody. And then they disappear them again, or they don't put them through trial. If there is something that the Rwandan government has on Bahati, if they want to prosecute him for something, bring him to court, show him in public. And until that happens, the Rwandan government must be held accountable for the disappearance of Bahati. Another artist is a Rwandan rapper by the name of, or his artist name is J. Polly. That is what he's known as. Another young man, very young, who died this summer in police custody. The government claimed that he overdosed on an alcoholic beverage consumed in prison. So, already there is an issue of how did he get the supply? So much supply that he was able to overdose. Of course, he was initially, let's start with the way, what he was arrested for. He was arrested for violating COVID or coronavirus controls. But normally in Rwanda, what they did to people who violated the coronavirus protocols, they took them to stadiums, made them spend overnight in the stadium, and then released them. There was also some type of fines. But with him, they took him to prison. They took him to jail, and they had, with every single one of these people, they always make up some charges against the person. And so he was in prison for months. And then when they pronounced him dead, they came up with an overdose, that he overdosed on alcohol. And again, Rwanda is a country that is so under tight control that nothing happens without the hand and the eye of the authorities. And so again, the death of J. Polly is not simply an accident or that he just simply died or he had an overdose. They either overdosed him or they killed him, and they claimed that he had overdosed on alcohol. This is in line with so many people who get killed. People get shot. Prisoners in Rwanda get shot with handcuffs on, shackled, and the government claims, this person was trying to escape. How does somebody try to escape or try to run with, how does somebody try to run away from the police or try to run away from prison guards with handcuffs on, shackled? And so even with J. Polly, they had him in custody, and maybe they didn't shoot him, but they decided they would take him out anyway. And so, without maybe taking too long, I'll hand it back over to you, Nadine, for the next artist that was a victim of the government of Rwanda and a victim of misinformation. Every single one of these, when they harm them, disappear them, kill them, they usually run a smear campaign before and after death, you know, to present them as some horrible people. But when you actually look closer, the horrible people are the people running the government of Rwanda. Back over to you, Nadine, for the next artist.
Yeah, thank you, Claude. Yeah, so we're still covering the part 2 of this broadcast, which is about artists in Rwanda who have been jailed, killed, or disappeared because of their talent. They use their talent to express the type of injustice that is being done to Rwandans. So they use different methods. They use them through songs, poems, all different kinds of ways, depending on what kind of talent they have. So our next victim is one of the beloved son of Rwanda. His death also made headlines, especially in Rwanda, and also some international news. They also covered something about, they also talked about his death. So he's a gospel singer and activist, and his name is Kizito Mihigo. Kizito Mihigo was killed in a suspicious death in police custody in February 2020. Shortly before his death, Kizito had told Human Rights Watch that he was being threatened and told to provide false testimony against political opponents, and that he wanted to flee the country because he feared for his safety. Actually, there is a video about him pretty much talk about how he was feared of his life. Unfortunately, the video is in French language. So next time we can probably put some English subtitle and provide to those who want to watch it. And that happened to be the last video we ever seen Kizito alive. Kizito's troubles started 6 years prior to his death. Before that, he was one of regime's favorite artists. And not forgetting also, Kizito Mihigo, he's also a genocide survivor. And he had everything in Rwanda. His life was good. He really did not need anything from the government. But the injustice that was being done, it was too much for him to handle and to kind of make him, stay quiet about what was happening. Also, Kizito, he was one of the artists who wrote Rwanda's latest national anthem composed in the year 2002. He performed at many large national events. But in a ton of events, Kizito wrote a song that became one of his most popular songs. The title was Igisobanuro cy'urupfu. In English, it means the meaning of death, in which he comforted victims and survivors without discriminating. The song acknowledges victims of violence committed by all perpetrators, including the RPF, the party in power in Rwanda. After singing the song, he was captured. They initially intended to kill him according to his own testimony, but then they changed their minds and took him to an undisclosed location that served as torture chambers in Rwanda. Rwanda's President Kagame denounced Kizito's song. After over a week missing, he emerged in public, handcuffed, surrounded by policemen. He was paraded in front of media cameras and microphones and made to confess without a lawyer after more than a week of torture. While in prison, he documented the torture and mistreatment he underwent via audio recordings that he smuggled out of prison and sent to people abroad to keep for him. Once he died, his audios were produced and aired on international television. Kizito also wrote a book about his life while in prison that can be purchased in multiple languages, including English. So the book was still available on Amazon, I believe. I think I haven't checked, but when I purchased the book, it was on Amazon for those who are looking for it. The main charge the government of Rwanda brought against Kizito was being a part of one or more armed groups, among other charges. Mind you, this is a gospel singer. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Kizito served 4 years of his 10-year sentence in prison on trumped-up charges and was eventually released in October 2018, only to be rearrested in February 2020. He died in police custody within 4 days of his arrest. His songs have been banned in Rwanda, and Kagame and RPF regime, as well as their supporters, have made a concerted effort to deny any investigation or pursuit of justice for Kizito. So yeah, this is a story of our beloved son. He was very loved a lot by Rwandans because of his heart. He had what I can say a heart of love. This is a guy who survived the genocide of against Tutsis. His father was killed, but he passed all that, and he still advocated for the unity of Rwandans. And in doing that also, he was telling the Rwandan government that they need to stop only talk about the genocide that was committed against Tutsis, but also think about the crimes and the genocide that have been committed against Hutus. Because of that, just because he said that every life matter, every life of a Rwandan matter, everybody should have the right to remember their loved ones, to mourn. He was arrested and he was killed. Because in Rwanda, believe it or not, there is a part of group that is not allowed to mourn their loved ones. Especially if you are a Hutu and you have your loved ones, if they haven't been killed in genocide against Tutsis, because there are some Hutus who died during the genocide against Tutsis, killed by the militias. But also there are Hutus and Tutsis who died during the genocide, killed by the RPF. Even before the genocide, we can talk before, when the Rwanda was first attacked in October 1990. RPF, the Rwandan Patriotic Front, the party of the Paul Kagame that is currently running Rwanda, they started killing people, 1990. That was 4 years before the genocide. There are some families who have been decimated then, and that kept going on. It happened during the genocide against Tutsis. It happened after the genocide against Tutsis. It's still happening as we are talking about this right now. So those people who are victims of all that crime by RPF, by the Rwandan government, their families are not allowed to mourn their loved ones. Mourning your loved one, if you are in that particular category, that is a crime. So Kizito was advocating that those lives matter, those lives of Hutus who died, or Tutsis who died because of the RPF, or any Rwandan who died during that time, whether was killed by the militias in Interahamwe or whether they have been killed by the RPF, their lives matters. And as Rwandans, they should be able to be remembered and be honored. So that kept him, that was the reason why he was put in jail. And all that, he did that by introducing that through the song that we mentioned above. And that became a crime. And then of course, Rwandan government is very good at constructing lies when they wanna start getting you. They have to construct lies and say, yeah, they said that he was a part of the militia. they start formulating all these kinds of things. If it's not that, or you are a genocide denier, or you perpetrated genocide, if you was old enough then and you was living in Rwanda, if you start speaking up, that's another lie they always have to paint you, or paint your family if you start speaking up. So we are demanding that all that has to stop, and we need true justice for every Rwandan. And yeah, so I'll go ahead and pass the microphone to Claude Gatebuke or Freeman.
Nadine, Kizito was tortured, and I think the studio has some footage of he himself, the audios that you referred to, that he released, talking about how he was tortured, mistreated, including Kagame himself, the president of Rwanda, the so-called great Pan-African. He also publicly spoke against Kizito. And all of that should be, if the studio has the footage, if you would please run the footage of Kizito himself speaking for himself about the treatment that he had.
According to President Kagame, seen here at a meeting with his soldiers shortly after the genocide, there were no revenge attacks. And despite all the evidence, no one is allowed to say that there were. A few days after Mihigo's arrest, he said in a speech, "I'm not a singer. I could never sing in praise of those who wish Rwanda harm. He who threatens this country's peace must pay." Channel 4 News has exclusively obtained a recording Mihigo made in prison and sent to an exiled human rights activist to be released only after his death.
Dans les jours suivants à la sortie de cette chanson, j'ai subi des insultes, des menaces et des messages me prévenant que quelque chose de mauvais allait m'arriver. J'ai été invité par la directrice de cabinet du président et le rendez-vous a eu lieu dans les bureaux du président du Sénat. L'actuel président du Sénat, à l'époque, il était vice-président du Sénat. Tous les deux m'ont dit que le président n'avait pas aimé ma chanson et que je devais lui demander pardon dans une lettre. La directrice de cabinet et le vice-président du Sénat m'ont dit que si je ne faisais pas ce qu'il m'avait dit, j'étais mort.
Before trial, he was brought before journalists. The police had found a WhatsApp chat he had had with a member of an opposition group who allegedly later took up arms against the government.
J'étais allongé par terre et on me frappait sur les fesses. Le commissaire adjoint de la police est venu me voir et m'a dit que si je continue à demander pardon et à plaider coupable dans tout le reste de mon parcours, c'est-à-dire en fait dans le procès, et que les choses allaient devenir faciles. Mais que si je plaide non coupable et que je cherche à dénoncer les injustices qui m'avaient été commises.
Thank you so much for the footage, for showing the footage. So Kizito was very courageous. And if you've never heard of somebody crying for help, to me, this was the biggest, loudest, one of the biggest, loudest. He's not the only one. We'll talk about others who, before they were killed, were able to send out their messages. But this is a demand by Kizito for anybody that knows his story to commit to justice, not only for Kizito, but justice for others, because he wanted to, you don't just, release recordings and write a book about a system and expose the system that mistreated you for the simple fact of people just enjoying, the reading. You want to educate. And when you're educated, when you learn something, you use it. And we have those of us who are witnesses of what he went through, have seen these audios, have heard these audios, have read the book, have a responsibility to absolutely pursue justice for everybody that's hurting, so that they know we don't have another Kizito. We can have others. Obviously, we talked about so many other cases. We cannot have other Kizito's. But there are other Kizito's. The next artist that we're talking about is Aimable Karasira, another survivor of the genocide. Aimable Karasira survived the genocide in 1994. His immediate family survived the genocide. But then after that genocide, the RPF killed his family. They killed his sister, they killed his father and his mother. And Aimable Karasira is also a very talented artist. He's a singer. He's also an intellectual. He was a university professor until the government of Rwanda had him removed from that job. And he's a thought leader. He's a type of person that, has ideas. He's a free thinker, and he has a very unusual style within the Rwandan community because he has no filter in terms of expressing his ideas and making sure that they are understood. He uses humor, but he also is brutally honest. He calls a spade a spade. He does not beat around the bushes in trying to, find or confuse the audience. When you hear what he's saying, it's very clear. So Aimable Karasira set up a YouTube channel in 2019. He was one of the pioneers of really using YouTube as a tool of free speech in Rwanda. Actually, he was the pioneer. Before him, most of what was being talked about, there were no real talk about social issues, but he broke the ground. He talked about social issues. He talked about all kinds of things that were happening in the country, and he stood with the underprivileged. Again, he was not necessarily underprivileged, but he was traumatized. Traumatized by the fact that after surviving the genocide, his family was killed by the RPF, the Rwandan Patriotic Front, who now have put a muzzle on any person who's lost their family to the RPF. Anybody whose family has been killed by the RPF has been muzzled. And Nadine just talked about it. If you are a Tutsi and you do not toe the line, the official narrative of the RPF, you're in trouble. If you're a Hutu and you talk about the genocide that was committed against Hutu people, the government of Rwanda comes after you. For those who are compassionate, those who have a humane heart, like the Kizitos, the Damanges, the Karasiras, and many others that we talked about, Rashid and others that we'll be talking about in this broadcast, it gets you in trouble. So Karasira, went on speaking for about a year and a half, using YouTube as a way to express himself. And in May of this year, he was arrested. And he was arrested for things that he spoke about on his YouTube channel. Just imagine being arrested for speaking. That's a strange concept for most people, I'm sure, following this broadcast. But that's what happened to him. I remember after that, I titled an article that said, only the RPF or the Rwandan government kills your family and then gets mad at you for speaking about it. And that's the price he's paying. He's paying the price for standing with the poor people whose houses were being destroyed. He's paying the price for speaking out on issues the government of Rwanda did not want him to speak about. He's paying the price because they tried to muzzle him from speaking about the genocide that he survived. And what happened to Aimable Karasira, it's been 7 months, almost 7 months now. It's been 6 months. And he also has not been seen in public. He had a little bit of, a short appearance in court. And for months now, no one has gotten any news of Karasira because he's been docked. He's been put in confinement where he cannot be reached. In fact, the other part of it is, he's been tortured like others that we talked about, mentally and physically. Initially, they claimed that he had coronavirus. And of course, we raised the alarm that they may kill him and claim that he died of coronavirus, just like they say J. Pauli, the other artist that we talked about, was, he died of an overdose. And they say that Kizito hung himself with a sheet, something that even physically makes no sense. How they claim so many people, killed themselves. I mean, sometimes they claim that somebody committed suicide and the person, shot themselves in the head and then they shot themselves some other place. And it just makes no sense. And so with Karasira, he's also undergoing torture. He's isolated. And at this time, the alarm bells must go up even further and louder, because his life is in danger without knowing the news of what's going on with him, and knowing the history of torture that the government and in the practice, the torture practices of the government of Rwanda. Karasira must be spoken about loudly and very clearly. And with that, I want to come back to you, Freeman and Nadine, so we can continue and proceed highlighting additional cases of what's going on with so many people in Rwanda. Again, this is just select. We're just doing a small selection of a small sample of people who are undergoing this type of thing.
Thank you. Thank you, Claude. This is such an incredible discussion. Sorry, my dear Queen, I actually thought that you were on mute. I jumped in very quick. Did you want to add anything before we proceed, Nadine?
Not exactly. I was just gonna go ahead and kind of try to go on with the next victim for this category, as we don't have so much time left, so that way we can be able to cover every topic of today's broadcast.
You are right. Please go right ahead. I was gonna mention quickly Deo Mushahidi, but if we don't have any time, actually, our dear Queen, proceed.
No, actually, go ahead and cover Deo Mushahidi.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'll be really quick and very brief. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to start by saying that we have brilliance in Rwanda rotting in jail. We have scientists, we have doctors, we have engineers, we have artists, we have who's who of those who are actually the engine of development in Rwanda rotting in jail. And one of these gentlemen, an exemplary individual or citizen of Rwanda, is Deo Mushahidi. Who is this gentleman, Deo Mushahidi? Deo Mushahidi is one of the most brilliant individual who has helped the RPF for a very long time. He's also a survivor of the Rwandan genocide of 1994, where countless of family members of his died. Were literally killed. He was a journalist and one of the very first ethnic Tutsis to denounce crimes of the RPF and Kagame openly, without sugarcoating. And not only that, he was one of the think tanks of the RPF. He literally was one of those brilliant people behind the RPF when he was in Europe, and ensuring that either the political side, the diplomacy side, all was going smooth on behalf of the RPF right before they seized the power in Rwanda. So Deo Mushahidi, he several years after the Rwandan genocide, he fled to Rwanda. He fled Rwanda and went into exile. And in exile, he co-authored a book called Secrets of the Rwandan Genocide with the world-renowned, the Cameroonian author, Charles Onana. Most of you guys know him. And this book was released in 2002. And I do believe that you may actually find that book on Amazon as well. And I encourage all of you to read that book, as the author, Charles Onana, has written numerous various articles and and many books talking about Rwanda, and just as much as Deo Mushahidi has also outspoken and very loudly spoke of the issues in Rwanda. So Deo Mushahidi kept on fighting and really hard without sugarcoating of the atrocities and all the things that were being done by the RPF and Kagame himself, since he's been one of the most influential leaders within the RPF, even I would dare say within Rwanda, ensuring that the ship of RPF continues. So the book he co-authored with Charles Onana details atrocities committed by the RPF and Kagame specifically. He's a true pioneer in truth telling of the Rwandans. Most people know Rwanda through the Hollywood film movie called Hotel Rwanda, and it's funny that we're also saying that the gentleman who's a real life hero of that movie, his name is Paul Rusesabagina, is also enjoying, for the lack of better word, the worst prison in Rwanda. And literally, sometimes when we joke that he's enjoying, it's not an enjoyment. I just want to stand corrected, just in case it offends people. But just as a lot of these renowned people, a lot of these people speaking openly of the atrocities, of the heinous, the critics, the strong and firm critics of what's happening in Rwanda. He's also, he received this sentence, a 25-year sentence in Rwanda for speaking up against all those atrocities and all things taking place within Rwanda. But he's been one of those incredible, amazing Rwandans who helped more than 1,200 people of Rwandans to escape the genocide during the 1994 genocide. So Rusesabagina literally sheltered more than 1,200 people in what was to be Hotel de Mircolin, I think. It was one of those like maybe 3 or 4 stars in Kigali. And he literally went out of his ways and helped those people. The kind of courage that you actually don't see with a lot of people these days. So he's done that. And consequently, he received a prison sentence because of the status and him being such a courageous individual, openly speaking up against all those atrocities that has been taking place in and outside of Rwanda. So the way he was apprehended or taken, he was literally kidnapped. We're talking about the movie style kidnap. Sometimes you can even actually think that we exaggerate, but I would encourage all of you to actually follow the news, follow the articles that has been published for over a year now since he's been kidnapped. He was kidnapped from Dubai, all of all the places, by the Rwandan government, sanctioned by the Rwandan government. And the then minister, Johnson Busibye, I do believe, he was asked multiple times and lied on the open television that he had no idea the whereabouts of Rusesabagina, and also the Rwandan government had no hand in it. It wasn't until a journalist of Al Jazeera played a clip where the minister was being advised by the Western consultants how he was going to spin the kidnap of Paul Rusesabagina. So why are we saying all of this? It's a culture in Rwanda to literally consolidate all the brains, all those people who are actually the engine of Rwanda, engine of the tomorrow's development within Rwanda, and just send them to jail, especially when your narrative is different than the narrative of the government, such as what happened to Deo Mushahidi, Paul Rusesabagina, Idamange, Karasila Emabe, and all these amazing individuals that we were mentioning and we are mentioning right now. So Deo Mushahidi, coming back to him while in exile, he formed an opposition political party. and was one of the staunchest critics of Kagame and the RPF regime. In 2010, he traveled to the Great Lakes region of Africa. He was abducted from Burundi and taken to Rwanda. And once he got to Rwanda, he was charged with a long list of allegations, all related to his criticism towards the government of Rwanda and President Paul Kagame, the dictator Paul Kagame. The only exception was his use of a forged document. And let's face it, right now, if I was to live here in the United States and go into Rwanda, and any of the nearby countries that have operatives of Rwandan governments, they are so connected. If I'm using my real names, I would easily be caught, especially that we're speaking up in the open like right now. So every one of us that you see here, either be Claude, either be myself or the Queen Nadine, it would almost be like a suicide to go to Rwanda using our real names. So Mushayidi himself, knowing that he has been openly speaking against, criticizing the government of Rwanda and criticizing Paul Kagame openly, that also landed him a jail sentence. And he was also apprehended in Burundi and taken to Rwanda with those he was given those trumped up charges and eventually received a lifelong sentence. A lifelong sentence in Rwanda. He's serving that right now, but he's one of those individuals who is exemplary. Despite the fact that he was convicted, he pioneered truth-telling of Rwandans all over. Even up to this day, he refused to change his narratives so he could receive a mercy. He's still serving jail time right now. The kind of jail time he's not supposed to be serving. The same thing that Paul Rusesabagina, Idamange, Karasila Imab, and so many of them that we are mentioning in this broadcast today. So I don't want to say so much, especially that we're running out of air time, but I just want you guys to see what's happening in Rwanda. It is not an accident. It is a very, very carefully orchestrated actions by the Rwandan government in order to ensure that every single person, every single one of us who dare to speak up openly, if you're not taken to jail, you are given trumped up charges, you are smeared. They run smeared campaign against you in and outside of Rwanda, ensuring that anywhere that you go, you basically become a nobody, and nobody wants to associate with you. But guess what? We're not having that today. In Rwanda, there is a saying that goes like, Burya Sibuno. So that usually says that gone are the days where you can just come in and bully me and bully Queen Nadine, Claude, and so many of us. And today we have came and we are openly saying it ain't happening anymore. And we're asking all of you guys who love democracy, who love human rights, and those of you who claim to actually advocate towards human rights, look at these cases we are mentioning and so many others that you probably would never hear of, all taking place in Rwanda. Minding you that your dollars, your euros, your funding to the Rwandan government is actually a part of what's allowing them to commit these atrocities towards the Rwandan citizen. And occasionally foreigners are also part of it, especially when they find you helping us up openly. So right back to you, my dear Queen Nadine, and thank you so much for allowing me to just inject those few words in it. Right back at you.
Thank you, Freeman. There is no way we were going to finish this broadcast without mentioning the Mushayidi, because he's one of the wonderful person. Considering what his family went through, yes, and considering also his skills, his intellectual, there is no way we could have finished this without talking about the Mushayidi. So our next victim, we're still in the categories of journalists. The next victim we're going to talk about is also another journalist, independent journalist named Niyonsenga Dieudonné, also known as Huma Hassan. So Huma Hassan is one of the rare Rwandan journalists who has committed to being an eye of the people. And it's he always introduced his broadcast saying that he's an eye of the people. And I always laughed at the way he said it in my local language, Kinyarwanda. He said Imboni ya Rwanda, which means eye of the people. Rwandan media, both inside and outside of the country, is littered with opportunists who either praise the government or tell safe stories and are afraid to confront the truth and realities of the ordinary Rwandans. So that was not the case for Huma Hassani. Huma was always taking his camera where the Rwandan government, where the cameras of the Rwandan government don't want him to go. Uncovering those stories that we don't see, because the only we see is the clean city of Kigali that every African is so overwhelmed, like every African is so obsessed about the cleanest city in Kigali. But you also have to think about what is behind those the clean city of Kigali. Why is it so clean, really? I mean, and other African cities are not clean. And New York City is not clean as Kigali. I mean, you gotta think about it. So many journalists will focus on trivial stories and still call themselves professionals. Huma Hassani, on the contrary, has committed to advocacy journalism, as he has stated. He is the eye of the people and does not filter the grievances of the people. He wants to bring the truth. He wants to bring the truth forward, especially the realities of the unprivileged. Because in Rwanda, I mean, when you are unprivileged, I mean, like being poor or being somebody who is not known, really, technically, you have no word, you have nowhere to say anything. During the burial of Kizito Mihigo that we just mentioned, the gospel singer, while the Rwandan government claimed that Kizito committed suicide, the gospel musician we spoke about earlier, Huma Hassani, reported that he saw some traumatic injuries on his face. And this happened like when they were having the viewing right before the burial of Kizito Mihigo. So Huma Hassan was the one of the few journalists who showed up at the funeral and was actually able to report exactly what he saw. Nobody else among the people who were there could even say what they saw, like how the body of Kizito Mihigo was like. But he was the only one who actually came out and mentioned that he saw some traumatic injuries on the face of the Kizito while he was laying in the casket right before the burial. At the onset of the coronavirus pandemic, Huma Hassan.
Nadine, I think it's important for the audience to know, the government of Rwanda was claiming that Kizito hung himself, that he killed himself by hanging. So where would those traumatic injuries come from if what the government was claiming is correct? But anyway, please proceed. I just wanted to clarify that for the audience and why it's important.
Exactly. Yeah. So at the onset of the coronavirus pandemic, Huma Hassani reported that members of the Rwandan military were raping women under the cover of enforcing coronavirus rules. He was arrested along with stories of the effects of the government and military destruction of homes of hundreds of city dwellers. Yeah, like we were mentioning also earlier with Idamanje, because Idamanje really protested against these coronavirus rules that the government was implementing every day. Like she mentioned actually that most of those decisions were being taken at night while people were actually maybe preparing for the next day. And then all of a sudden, the new implementation of coronavirus rule will come out of nowhere. So also during these enforcing rules, there were a lot of rapes that happened. And all these rapes were being done by the security forces of Rwanda. He was arrested in April 2020. The charge against him was violation of coronavirus measures, which normally results in fines and overnight detention in a stadium. He was instead detained for almost a year, released in mid-March 2021, and the verdict was he was acquitted of those allegations. Upon his release, he shared stories of how he was tortured while detained. He was confined in a really tight space, wet and moisture, to where his body started to break down. He also talked about authorities attempting to bribe him into silence. After his release, he continued his commitment to what he called advocacy journalism, where he gave his platform to the most underprivileged people in the country. Story after story, he broke new grounds on the level of poverty Rwandans were experiencing, injustices towards ordinary people, and abuses by authorities. Somehow, unlike in many other parts around the world, where a person acquitted of a crime is allowed to continue living freely, Kuma Hassan's decisions was appealed by the government. In November of this year, 2021, Kuma Hassan was convicted and sent to prison for 7 years after being previously acquitted. Upon his sentencing, the prosecution admitted that one of the laws used to convict Kuma Hassan was outdated and no longer valid since 2019. Even at the time he was arrested in 2020, the law was already invalid, but they still sentenced him for 7 years. After sentencing, his father and driver went to visit, and they too were arrested and then released days later. But it's all because once we happen to know that something is happening in Rwanda, us who can speak up, we always raise our voices, and that's how the driver and the father of Kuma Hassan were able to be released. But when they try once, they're gonna try twice. And if they try twice and they don't get you, the third time, you're gonna die. They will kill you. So usually in Rwanda, if you get arrested once, just know that that is like a warning. It's gonna happen to you again. So I'm feared of I have fear for his father and his driver. So if the studio can put up a video about when Kuma was being arrested this last month in November, where he was actually saying that he was pretty much, he gave goodbyes because he felt like his life is threatened, and this time he's not gonna make it out the prison. So studio.
no kwitwa nakitwa rwose ntabwo ubu ngubu ikigezweho ntabwo bajya bafunga kabiri, ikigezweho no kwita nta kindi. ubu ngubu nyine Imana abakurikira Ishema TV, abankurikirana mu bice bitandukanye, bazansabire ku Mana, bazansabire uko rigashira. dore ngiye bari bakinyeneye, hari byinshi bakeneyeho. ubu ngubu tuvugana barimo gushaka uburyo bakurira kugira ngo bakureho kamera zo mu rugo, biragaragara, ndimo ndabibona. ubwo rumva rero ni ibintu byamaze kundenga, igisigaye ni ukumubwira ngo nduhukire mu mahoro.
That's it is a very scary clip. And this was showing the last time he was arrested, and this is last November. And it's very sad indeed for somebody who has done anything, who actually has spoken up, helping people to put their stories out there, the stories that the Rwandan government want to suppress. It's sad to see him being arrested that way. And it's sad to see him actually, pretty much he gave his last goodbyes because he felt for sure that he's probably not going to make it out of the prison because this is the second time he's arrested. And he knows very well what he went through the first time, the tortures, and a lot of threats. Yeah, these tortures goes up with a lot of threats. So he gave his last goodbye, and it's very sad to actually see that. Like, this is an innocent person, and he's actually saying goodbye because he's being handed into hands of vultures. Yeah, so this ends our part 3, the part where we're covering the journalists in Rwanda. So we are moving on.
There is one more I would like to highlight among the journalists, if you don't mind. I just want to use his own words, Cassien Muhanga, who has been missing since May of this year in Mozambique with the hand of the government of Rwanda. But instead of, profiling him, I just want to quickly share what he said himself. He shared this with, let me just make sure. It was, I cannot, I'll share who he was sharing this with in a little bit. It was written, it was done in 2018. So this is a year and a half. It was November 2018. So it was a year and a half before he was taken by security forces in Mozambique with the hand of the government of Rwanda, and now is still missing since that time, even though they acknowledged arresting him. So he says, "My name is Cassien Muhanga. I was a journalist and managing director of Amazing Grace Christian Radio Broadcasting from Kigali since 2009. And on April 7th, 2014, I was kidnapped alongside my colleague, Gerald Niyomugabo, who was a researcher on religion and history of Rwanda, author and university professor, and we were both held incommunicado in unknown torture chambers. They're known as safe houses in Rwanda. That's what they call them, but that really is a term for torture chambers. So it was in torture chamber where we were tortured for the whole week. During that time, the press and some members of our prospective families announced our missing, but the police denied any implication. After a week, the police accepted publicly that I was within its custody and presented me to the press, but they didn't show the whereabouts of my colleague, Gerald Niyomugabo, and up to now, he has not been seen. At this time, I realized that the police had arrested another famous singer, Kizito Mihigo, and we talked about Kizito Mihigo, the gospel singer, the activist, and the audios that we listened to earlier, who sang a song of, unifying and recognizing everybody's pain in Rwanda. And he was held in the same circumstances, Kizito Mihigo. And we were immediately prosecuted in the case. They named Kizito Mihigo and his co-accused on different charges, among others, forming a criminal gang, conspiracy against the established government or president, complicity in the terrorist act, and conspiracy to murder. During our holding in the torture chamber, the police extracted from each of us to confessions under duress and requested us to confess once we arrived in the court before the judge. When we arrived to the court, I pleaded not guilty on all charges, but my colleague Kizito pleaded guilty and dismissed his lawyers, expecting that the government would keep its promise to release him, but it was in vain. With unfair trial, as it is, that has been noticed by many observers, the Kigali High Court sentenced Kizito Mihigo to 10 years in prison, and for me, they sentenced me to 25 years in prison. There was another former soldier named Tukuzumyemi Jean-Paul, who was brought in our case from nowhere to 30 years in prison. And he goes on to state the real reasons of why they were actually arrested versus the trumped up charges. These charges are really standard. Anybody that's arrested for this, every person that we talked about here has had either these charges or some, those charges, a part of those charges that I just read, that they charged Neo Mugabo and Cassian Namhanga and Kizito Mihigo with. So now he says, the reason he was really arrested is because of the messages that he was putting out. Again, the unifying messages. And, there's something is actually, current right now within the Rwandan community. There are people who are united by truth and people who are not united by lies. And so these are, Cassian Namhanga, Kizito Mihigo, Damange, and many others are those who unite Rwandans by truth. And the government of Rwanda is, they unite through lies. And then there are those who claim to be moderates or in the middle. Those are also, they also try to unite by lies, mixing truth and lies, which is lies. So Cassian Namhanga he was committed to the truth. Kizito Mihigo's committed to the truth. Nyamugabo was committed to the truth. Idamange and so many others that we've talked about. And so the real reason for imprisonment was criticizing the government and exposing the truth that the government does not want exposed. Now, what happened to him while he was in prison? He continues and says, in the prison, I got many bad inhuman treatment, and in the International Red Cross can testify on this. He's been held inside many cell prisons many times with no reason, in solitary confinement with no reason. And he was moved around in many places to destabilize him psychologically, physically, and to keep people from being able to visit him. So then he escaped prison in Rwanda, went into exile, and this year he was found in Mozambique. Somehow they were able to find him, and he has disappeared after that arrest in Mozambique. And again, this is one of those gotta raise alarm, not only on the Rwandan government, but the Mozambican government, because there's complicity by authorities in Mozambique who arrested him and then either handed him over to the Rwandan government or are complicit in keeping him incommunicado and nowhere to be seen until this time. So thank you, Nadine and Freeman, for making the space to share on Cassian Namhanga.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Claude. So this is Cassian Namhanga. This part finishes the third categories of the journalists who became victims of the injustice. So we're moving on to the part 4. And this part is a special category. Like I say, this category, it's pretty much, these are young people. Actually, this is category of young people who were born between 1979 and 2007. These are our generation. And there are so many of them who have been kidnapped, who have been killed by the Rwandan government because they decided to speak the truth. And the reason why this is special is because the majority of them, all of them, they are young, they are current generation. And also, these people, they haven't been known, like the previous categories we mentioned, at least their stories somehow they made headlines, but these people, they just disappeared and nobody really know what happened to them, and because maybe they were not known. There are people who are like our close family members. There are people who are friends of our friends. They are our fathers, our some of them are, of course, our fathers. Yeah, they are our brothers, pretty much, our brothers and sisters. So part 4, I'll go ahead and start with Claude Gatebuke to start covering this category of part 4.
So in this category, this is such an important category because these are people who, usually you don't hear about. Some of them we do hear about them. A number of them are. So before we talk about people of our generations, a couple of people. There is someone who ran for president in 2003, and he's in prison in 2021. His name is Theonest Nitejeka. We're not going to go into a lot of detail about his case, but this is somebody who treated so many people in the prisons in Rwanda. And possibly if we can show the prison conditions by the way that these people are in, I think it would be, it would help the audience understand what's happening.
I would like to put in something. He's actually a doctor. He's a trained surgeon doctor by profession.
Another very talented Rwandan languishing in prison. Yes, and we can possibly just in the background show the prison conditions in Rwanda. But this man has spent so much of his life in prison for challenging Kagame in an election. After he challenged him in an election, they made up some trumped up charges of genocide and sentenced him to 15 years in prison after he was acquitted the first time or released. And now he's serving a sentence that is supposed to last until 2023. This is Theonest Nitejeka that I'm talking about, a surgeon, a doctor who's supposed to be treating people, but instead he is languishing in prison. The next set of people that I want to bring to everyone's attention are the invisible people. One, people who have been massacred in refugee camps, in exile. Rwanda and Uganda invaded the Congo in 1996, 25 years ago. They went into the refugee camps and they indiscriminately killed every human being, every chicken and goat, everything that was in front of them. They killed them. Then they chased those refugees across the Congo and they committed a genocide against the Hutu people among those who were fleeing. And the Hutu people that they committed genocide against were not just Rwandans. They selected Hutus out of the Congolese, other Congolese ethnic groups. Rwandan Hutus were selected, Burundian Hutus were selected, and Congolese Hutus were selected. And they killed them on the basis of the ethnicity, and they intended to wipe them out. And among, of course, with the people who fled were Tutsis who also were killed in that genocide, just like in the genocide in 1994 against Tutsi people that many Hutus were killed in that genocide. Same thing happened in the Hutu genocide. So hundreds of thousands of people. The mapping report, the UN mapping report on Congo that was released in 2010 states that there was more than 200,000 people who went missing. And missing it's been 25 years. If they've been missing for that long, and there's been countless victims, mostly children, among those victims, of course, those are among, that's a small amount of victims, by the way. 200,000 is a small amount of victims considering the 6 million Congolese people who've been killed. Now, on top of that, there's also the people of our generation, as Nadine talked about, people born between the years 1979 and 2007. There's a study that showed that just in the space of 10 years, between 2005 and 2016, almost 600,000 of those people had gone missing. And of course, Rwanda has this practice of going around and picking up children off the streets and taking them to these, camps, concentration camps or torture chambers, and they go missing. There's so many examples. We've talked about the cases of Jean Damour Ngirinshuti. Where is he? We talked about just now the Bahatis. Where are they? We've talked about, there's so many others, but let me start with one in particular that is close to all three of us presenting here. Much closer to you, Nadine, than us, but Julius Rugwiro, also known as Romeo, was an activist and outspoken critic of the government of Rwanda. He was tricked into a trip and to East Africa, and he's been missing for the last 5 years. And for those of us who know him and know his energy and everything, we know that the only reason he's missing is because the government of Rwanda was looking for him, and they trapped him, they tricked him, and took him. And maybe I'll hand it over to you, Nadine, to say a few words about that case. But we know so many people that have suffered this. And when we talk about the government of Rwanda infiltrating and actually going into the activist community for this purpose, it's real. This happens to real people that we actually know. So go ahead and turn it over to you, and hang in there too, you and your family.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Claude. So in my brother's case, like when we talk about being tricked, and this happened back in 2015, when Rwandans were now pretty yet aware of what was happening, of what the plans and schemes of RPF in abducting and kidnapping people was. So he was tricked into going to East Africa, thinking that he's meeting other activists who are fighting the same cause, like he was. And that's one thing we have to be careful as Rwandans activists. Not everybody that speaks the same language like you do is actually for the best of Rwandans. So in that particular case, that's what we're talking about when we mention being tricked, because we have a lot of people that come and infiltrate our organizations and infiltrate our work, and they speak the same language. They speak exactly like we do, but sometimes there is cues. There is those red flags you see, and please, when you start seeing something like that, don't ignore it. Don't ignore those red flags, because good thing that God has created us with the intelligence, and most of the time when those things happen, you see those red flags. But back then, nobody could tell that, nobody really, you always trusted people like, this is speaking. They are fighters. They are just as fighters as me. So he was tricked that way, thinking that he's meeting other activists, but that was not the case. He disappeared, and he disappeared along with another popularly known activist who had, he actually had a website, like a news website. His name was, if you can remind me his name, for some reason I did not write it down.
His name was Inyas. I remember.
Yes.
I cannot remember his. I don't have his last name right on top of my mind either. These are people we knew these people. Mm-hmm. We've seen these people. We've shook hands. We've hung out with them. We've had food with them, and all of a sudden, they get tricked and out of nowhere, and there's no other reason.
Right.
They were full of life. They were happy in life. They had no issues, and they had families.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also there was another activist along that, which I don't know him. I just happened to know when all this happened, and his name was Bonner. All three of them were reported missing, and they do it very well because the people. Rwandan government has trainings in those abduction, has trainings in fooling people and they use people who are very close to you sometimes, especially when it comes to like abducting people sometimes or poisoning people. Sometimes they use people actually that you may not even think of, like people who are very close. So that's the story about my family and my brother. And also we can also talk about other activists who have been abducted. Mainly this happens also in East African countries like Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Zambia. Now we just had a case that happened in Mozambique. And in Mozambique, it's not only Cassien Hamhanga who has been abducted and disappeared. we recently had somebody getting killed who was also a part of the Rwandan community, a businessman, Rwandan community leader who was assassinated. And this is real people, my fellow Rwandans, friends of Rwanda, this is real. We are hunted worldwide because we speak against the Rwandan government wrongdoings and injustices. So in East Africa, we can also talk about the case of, there is actually a young guy that I happen to know him through the social media. His name is Ndamira Jean de Dieu. That was also another guy, young, just young like us, who disappeared. I didn't know him very well, but I know he used to send me messages of encouragement when we would speak out like this. He would send the messages of encouragement. And then at some point, he decided to create a blog where he was documenting about his life. And then one morning, he was disappeared. And then also we have a case of
then the Miraculous also, I believe he before he disappeared, he said that he was going to go back to Rwanda to retrieve a passport or something like that. Mm-hmm. But there was definitely a connection with the Rwanda government. But go ahead.
Yes. And then also we have a special case. Actually, this is of a young Rwandan in Zambia. This Rwandan, he probably was in his 20s, like late 20s, early 30s when he disappeared. So he was born in Rwanda, but he fled in 1994 with his family to Zambia. He was probably like 5 years when he left Rwanda. So this guy went to Zambia. He was able to get a better education. He actually became a lawyer, had a good, very good job in Zambia. And he was also one of the critics somehow of the Rwandan government. So this guy was tricked, like the Rwandan government. I don't know where he met those people, but he wasn't. They pretty much persuaded him. They worked on him, brainwashed him, and he started defending Rwandan government. And actually, Claude knows him more than I do. I can actually let Claude speak a little bit more about him.
Yeah, so all three of us actually know the story. I remember, so you're talking about Lionel Nishimwe. He was 3 years old when he left Rwanda. He was 23 or 24 when he went missing in, I think it was 2017, February 2017. Now, what happened with Lionel was, we were close at one point. He was a staunch critic of the government of Rwanda. We had contact and in fact met once. Then all of a sudden he started, there's like a change in behavior, and he started behaving in a way that I was like, what's going on with Lionel? And all of a sudden he starts defending the government of Rwanda, and suddenly he shows up in Kigali. And then when he was in trouble, he sent a bunch of documents, and he sent me a message. He had been harassing me online, and then he sent me a message and says, "Hey, can I trust you? I need help." And it is interesting that no matter how much the people who support the government of Rwanda come after us, they also trust our integrity because they see that we would not let anybody down. So then I asked him, "What do you need?" And he sent a bunch of documents. And I remember at that time I called Freeman. And so I was like, man, I think this guy, he's probably trying to hack me. So we talked about how to prevent the hack. And I remember, Freeman going, yeah, nobody's going to hack you when you do it that way. So there was a method to retrieve and all that. And I looked at them, and he had written a statement about, denouncing the government of Rwanda, the things they were asking him to do. He was being made to denounce people, if you remember those documents, Freeman. And I was like, I don't believe this guy. I need a little bit more proof. So I asked him to send a video. I was like, okay. He said he claimed that he was in the Congo. So I was like, if you're in the Congo, send me a video saying all of these things that you're saying here. And I think the studio has that video. He didn't send me those documents by myself. There were other people who also received those documents. But the specific request for the video, I asked him because I was like, I need more than, you just sending me some documents. The documents included receipts where his hotels and, his alcohol, and, they supplied him with women. This was all paid by the government, the Rwandan government investigative services. He also had a list of people that the government of Rwanda gave him and told him, you need to go and testify against these people. You need to speak against these people and accuse them of these crimes that he said, no, they hadn't committed these crimes, so I'm not going to accuse them of them. And after that time, they started squeezing him. They jailed him, they tortured him. Then when they released him, and they took away the property that they had given him as a reward for coming back. They took away all that property, and then he fled. But then after making that video, he stated that he was going back to Rwanda for something, and he was never seen again. Do we have that video? If we can maybe run his own testimony, his own words.
Rwanda was received by the people from the National Secret Service. That's the Rwanda National Secret Service. I was received by the hotel. The hotel was Kigali Diplomat Hotel. They took care of me for about 2 months. I was in Kigali for about 21 days. Then I went to Gisenyi. I was there for the remainder of the time. So when I arrived at the airport, I had my own money. Actually, I had come with my own money to Rwanda. And they told me, no, I shouldn't use my own money. They had already prepared for me everything. Even on the plane, I was in the business class. I was not in economy. We came with some other people. Those people are in economy at the airport. I didn't do clearance. They took care of everything. When I arrived at the hotel, they asked me how I was feeling. They took care of me. They took care of everything I wanted. The girls, they were bringing for me beer. I was drinking. I spent about over $4,000 in expenses. I used to meet the guys like Evode. Used to come and visit me, Sani. Even the head of NSS was there. I've forgotten the name. He's a colonel. He studied in Ghana. He told me that I was welcome home. And that's the way it was, basically. That's the way it was generally. And I was under their care for some time, and for real, I was new to Rwanda. I didn't know many people, so it was beneficial to me. It was beneficial to me how? It was beneficial to me in the sense that I was looking at less expenses now, less expenses in terms of costs, the like. So I just took care of that. I just accepted everything. However, the problem was when they started asking me about the people in Zambia, such and such, a threat to national security, such and such can do such and such. But I was shocked. I just told them I didn't sign up for this. These people, I saw them, they were my uncles. We lived with them in Lusaka. No, they are FDLR. No, they're against the regime. Do you know them? Do you know where they live? Now, there are 2 people here already in Rwanda. The 2 people are Mugisha Innocent and Egypt. They had already given them lists, so I had to confirm. That's when I started refusing. When I started refusing, it became an issue. They dropped me first. They stopped supporting me. Started asking me to write articles. Yes, I started writing articles, but they've given you what to write. They tell you what to write. Everything is already structured. I'm telling you this from DR Congo. Things are very hard for me. So from there, I used to do those articles for free. Yeah, they started taking care of my bills. I came to fight for my house. I got my house back. I had all the documents. I also got one of my farms, Patiraj in Gishwati, the one which was left by my late mother, veterinary doctor. Just to find out that those people had already been taken over by some kennels. So it was difficult. You have documents showing that the properties are yours, but you are told the person who is in possession of that. Just there's no rule of law. There's no rule of law. You have document confirming that the properties are yours, but the one who is in the house is someone else, is in power. It's a general. No, it's very difficult. That's what I'm telling you. At least I've tried to explain 1 or 2 things. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so that's was a clip that he sent for the last time, and this is the last time we saw Lionel speaking. So after that, he disappeared, and nobody have heard from him since then. And like I say, this was a young man who actually was not even. He probably he doesn't even probably remember when he left Rwanda, but they've been able to brainwash him and actually tricked him to go to Rwanda just because they were targeting, because he comes from a strong family, a family that actually some of family members, they had higher positions in the Habyarimana's government, but the family is innocent too, but they were trying to convince him to put some allegations on them so they can go after them. And when he refused, that's what all this stuff happened. But other than that, we also have another young man that I really want to mention. He was abducted in Kenya, in Nairobi. That's where he was residing. And his name is Rutembesa. And this guy, I don't personally know him. The first time I actually found him, it was on social media, it was on YouTube, when he started uploading these videos of old Rwandan music, like those music we grew up listening to, like when we were younger, the music that were being played by the music of Rwandan artists that were being played on Rwandan radios when we were younger. So he started uploading those videos, and I really liked following his platform on YouTube because of that. And then he decided to start one to speak up against the injustices of Rwandan government. And then one day he also went missing. So yeah, that pretty much closes our broadcast for this last category of the injustices committed against Rwandans. So I'll go ahead and pass it on to Claude Gatebuke for the final remarks, and so we can close the broadcast for today's edition. Claude?
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. We're running out of broadcast time, so we will not be able to read the audience's comments, but I just wanted to thank the audience so much for being engaged and sharing this conversation. Please continue to share this conversation. But there is a poem by one of our colleagues and our friends and brother, Eric Ngoga, called Free in My Mind, that I would like to read before we close. And it says, and I'm not the greatest at reading art, so please bear with me. It is when I'm at the bottom, when everything loses meaning, when my only salvation is my imagination because the reality is too difficult to bear. When nothing else is left, when the last wall of freedom is down, because I cannot live like this, as if I am manless and soulless. They are trying to reach to my mind as if it was not enough for them to chain my body, as if their torments on my bones are not enough to declare victory. But my mind is my last withdrawal. I will not let them take my last free place because I intend to keep the flame alive. I intend to save this imagination for a better future. I will use my imagination to build my country because the country is its people. And I am one of those people. And our country will be built by our imagination. Yes, the country starts in our minds. Freedom is how we think. Justice starts with the idea of equity. Liberation starts with a sense of the other. Thank you so much, Eric, for this poem. So just so that I don't take too long, I want to pass it back over to you both to close. The conversation we had today is difficult because some of the people we talked about, we actually know them personally, but even if we don't know them personally, it matters. We all must speak up. And my call to action here is for everybody watching here. If you are in a country that respects freedom of speech, a donor nation like the US, the UK, Canada, the European Union, especially the Netherlands, speak up. The Netherlands is the one country that finances the Rwandan judicial system the most, and they must withhold the money that they're investing in there because they're investing in injustice. But also, we must demand that the U.S. and the U.K. and the European Union and other countries, our allies in those countries, the people who love truth and freedom, must take a stand with us so that we can end this injustice. And to end this injustice is to stop supporting this dictatorship, to stop financing that dictatorship, to stop military support of the dictatorship in Rwanda. And so everybody can reach your congressperson. Absolutely reach out. In certain countries, they call them parliamentarians. Reach out and make sure that that is something that is done. And let me not take too long because we are running out of time, and turn it over to you both, Freeman and Nadine, for your closing remarks. But until everyone is free, no one is free. Until everyone is free, no one is free. When we talk about freedom, we're not just talking about how people feel, because it doesn't matter if somebody is offended by our pursuit of justice or pursuit of freedom and liberation. What's important is that the people are free and they can live freely in their pursuit of whatever, however they want to pursue life.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Claude. Thanks for great remarks. So we'll go ahead and close this broadcast. But before we end the entire broadcast, I would like also to say some few words. And this goes to also my friends of Africa, my African brothers and sisters on the entire continent of Africa. The Africans who are looking for the Pan-Africanism that we keep talking about, because I know a lot of Africans, we always preaching about Pan-Africanism, preaching about the unity of Africa, but we fail to actually check our leaders. Like, it makes me sick when I see Africans actually glorifying somebody like Paul Kagame of Rwanda. This is just a few stuff we just talked about. These people who are suffering because of him. And this is just few stories. This is like a drop of salt in the ocean. There is so many cases that we can talk about. There is so many people who have been killed, not individually. People being called in the meetings. Like, they call you for a meeting and it would turn into death. Like, they will call people to go for a meeting and they would throw grenades and bombs and kill all of them and push them in mass graves. This happened in Rwanda, you know, and this is the guy most of you Africans look up as a Pan-Africanist. And this is the guy you trust that he's gonna get you where you wanna be as Africa, as the unified Africa of peace, prosperity. I just want to tell my Africans, brothers and sisters, or friends of Africa, that if you want the unity of Africa, we have to check those leaders we are calling Pan-Africanist, because some of them they pretty much they hide behind the name Pan-Africanist, but they are the number one sellouts, and that's another method that you guys need to know about that. And I think it's Malcolm X who said that sometimes the media is gonna make you. I'm not sure if it's Malcolm X or it could be some. The media is gonna make you, the mainstream media, you know, because now there is so many medias. We have these independent medias that actually are here to speak up the truth. Yeah, but the mainstream media, they're gonna make you like the person who is your oppressor, and you're gonna hate the oppressed. You know, and that's what happens in the case of Rwanda. Everybody goes by the shining streets of Kigali. Everybody goes by all these made up statistics about Rwanda, how progressive it has become since after genocide and everything. But they don't tell you the life of an ordinary Rwandans. You know, anything they want to do, they do it. Yesterday, we were seeing a video where they are going in the villages, vaccinating people by force in their houses. They will catch you and grab you and vaccinate you, saying they are vaccinating you against COVID-19. I mean, by force, you know, at least in these countries, we still have a choice. We can decide if we want to have it, or we can decide if we don't, you know. So these leaders, these African leaders, we call Pan-Africanists, we have to check them. We have to make sure that their words match what they do, you know, and also who is helping them. How can you be a Pan-Africanist and you are number one country in Africa whose military is being trained by United States, by the UK, your intelligence services being trained by the Mossad in Israel? How can you tell me that you are looking for the best of Africans? And that's Kagame, that's Rwanda. Rwandan army, the Rwandan military, they get trained by United States. And I would like to tell like all the friends of Africa or the Africans or anybody who live in these countries that have democracy, who have where the donors are, like where the most of these donors that give to those governments in Africa that oppresses people, I'm sorry, guys.
No, you got everybody on fire now. We might keep going forever.
Because this is a very sensitive subject for me to talk about, because it's very painful to see actually, to see like these oppressors being supported and killing our people. And then there are people applauding and thinking like they are the best leaders we have. I feel like it's a duty for every African to know and to start challenging them. I'll hand it over to Claude Gatebuke or Freeman. I can't speak anymore.
Nadine, I think the last thing we want to show solidarity with our sisters and brothers in various countries, including Sudan, you know, in so many others, but also Ethiopia today, the hot topic of today.
Hashtag no more.
No more. Right. No
and
more.
Also, I would like to say that because I was telling Claude Gatebuke that yesterday, I definitely have to mention that because Ethiopia, Ethiopians, the solidarity you have behind your government, oh my God, I can't thank you more than enough. Like, I can't thank you much because it's very impressive. I feel like Ethiopia is becoming the cradle of the African Renaissance, you know, because Africa, we dreamed in the 60s when our forefathers were actually wanting the unity of Pan-Africanism, and that has been destroyed, of course, by the imperialism, by the corrupted leaders that we have right now. Yeah. But I feel like Ethiopia is bringing that back, the unity behind your government, the unity fighting against the evil of the imperialism. I feel like it's back, and it's starting from Ethiopia. The way you guys are united and fighting against the TPLF, which TPLF, by the way, I can compare to the RPF of Rwanda, because going through the whole history of how everything started, there is so much comparison between those two. Yeah. So I stand behind you, Ethiopians. Hashtag no more, and everybody should say hashtag no more. I wish there was
hashtag no more.
If there is anybody coming into my town, I'm definitely going to join you. Viva Ethiopia, hashtag no more.
Yes. You're welcome to come down to Nashville. You know, there was one, I think it was last week, and there's another one coming up soon. So, you know, we'll be standing with our Ethiopian sisters and brothers. No more. Hashtag no more. And we want it to go from Ethiopia all the way across to Kinshasa.
That's right.
You know, crossing the Sudan, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, all the way over to the Congo.
My God, I wish we were not running out of time. Our dear Queen Nadine, she had me just jumping in my chair because she's singing the rhythm. just singing the energy. That's just like pushing me up. And I just wish that we have more airtime. Needless to say, we've got plenty more where this came from. And I'm super grateful to our dear Queen Nadine. She really is a powerhouse. You can see why she's leading this conversation. And not to mention our brother Claude Gatebuke. We live together in these trenches. The trenches are real. And we want to ask you, the audience worldwide, please get beyond the Singapore of Africa. Literally open the hood and see what's right underneath of it. There's so much that you guys never get to see, hear of, because we have such an amazing political machinery, lobbyist, whose job is to ensure that the way we dress Rwanda in front of your eyes is the most glamorous way you can imagine, even better than the movies. But here, us, sons and daughters of Africa, sons and daughters of Rwanda, in these various countries that you guys have citizenship in, we are here speaking up at the expense of our own lives, at the expense of our own being cut off from Rwanda, at the expense of being kidnapped, just like Paul Rusesabagina, at the expense of the likes of Idamange, Deo Mushahidi, Karasila Imab, and those who are just being imprisoned for speaking up. But guess what? That old saying that I was just giving you guys in Kenya, Rwanda, you guys should learn it. Burya si buno. It ain't like it used to be back in the in those old days. We're not going to let it happen.
Now.
That's right.
That was then and this is now.
That's right. So we're here to say that we're just not going to be bystanders of crimes up in the open, of rapes up in the open. It just chills my body when Nadine was just giving testimonies of Idamange being denied the hygienic products of a woman's during menstruation time. This is not just a Rwandese issue. It's a worldwide issue. As a woman, any way it could be. How is it that a government that cares so much and has the audacity to say that more than 60% of women are in parliament and they speak on behalf of the people, but they cannot dare speak on behalf of just another woman in need? What kind of Rwanda are you seeing? Those donors who are giving out so much money, males in parliaments, female in parliaments, politicians, I call them politicians. They're selling out the country. And when we use these words, they call us haters of the government. But how can you hate when you see your sister being raped in front of you? How can you hate? Or how can you not even be a hater? Seeing your mom being raped in front of you, in front of her husband. These things are happening in Rwanda in the open. And perpetrators, they're walking free today. No jail time, no jail sentence, and certainly they will never get to have a court date. The victims are the one being muzzled, killed. And if you don't stay in that lane that you're being put on, you end up in jail or dead. There is so much to say about Rwanda. And when we speak like this, I was born in Rwanda, and so are my colleagues here. We should be giving you guys the most glamorous picture of Rwanda. But it will be dishonest, and we want to stand in truth. We want to speak the truth of what's happening, the truth that we see, the truth that we know. The kind of truth you will never hear on most of the mass medias. But we want to bring it out. This is our time and nothing is going to stop it. So with that in mind, I really want to say thank you. And in particular, I just want to say thank you to those who have really worked so hard to help produce the content, the researchers. I can just mention a few names. Our Queen Constance, our Queen Natasha, our Lion Oscar. Dear Queen, did you want to...
I would like to add on something.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, we mentioned about Ethiopia is fighting a great war.
Yes.
But I also want to thank every true Pan-Africanist out there. We have different kinds of wars we fight. It may be bullets and guns war. but we have also brothers in Southern Africa, in the country of Zimbabwe, fighting against unnecessary sanctions, illegal sanctions against the people of Zimbabwe, trying to starve them so that they can submit themselves to the imperialism. We have activists like Rutendo Matinyarare, who's fighting against those injustices, against sanctions on peoples of Zimbabwe.
Yes.
West Africa, we have somebody like Kemi Seba, who is fighting a strong war against the French imperialism. Central Africa, we have other activists.
Kambale
Musavuli,
Milton Alimadi.
Yes.
Abraham Mutai in East Africa.
Yes.
Yeah. So I thank you so much. Keep fighting, keep up the good work. Together, one day we're going to be united and we'll be one great Africa. Sorry, Freeman, go ahead.
No, thank you so much. And I will second motion that 1,000 times, because all this work that we are doing, we're doing it because we believe in it. There is not an amount of money that you will give us to be sellouts. And we don't say this lightly. Despite the consequences, despite all that can come upon us, we are not for sale. We respect you, all of you, the same way you want to have that respect. But it certainly isn't going to be over all bodies, over our brothers and sisters, all over the continent of Africa. In particular today, like in Rwanda. And so those of you who really want progress, who really want to see us do better, especially some of the countries who actually would rather have all these immigrants go back to their respective countries, please stop meddling in their business. Help those people go back and establish themselves in in those countries. Check every dictator. Check every dictator. And let's destroy the systems that are actually killing us. They have no business, they have no room in today's world. And this is not racism, this is just a fact. There's no reason why you implement or you support a system that's killing citizens in various countries. So thank you so much, our lions, our queens all over, those researchers who have helped us. Thank you for the affiliation journalists who have been working with us, and thank you for the networks that are making this broadcast a reality, especially that we know that it's not easy to project and to distribute these images, these videos when they're not as popular. And thank you really for keeping it real. Thank you for allowing us to speak up on behalf of the voiceless all of Africa, on behalf of the voiceless in Rwanda and so many other countries. And thank you, lastly but not the least, to all of you activists all over the world who really care enough. And you back it up with your money, you back it up with your integrity, you back it up with your personality, even at the expense of who you are, even at the expense of your comfort zone. And you're still marching forward and saying enough is enough. So with that in mind, thank you so much. Until next time, I am Freeman Bikorwa with HMG Network in Washington, D.C., greater region. We are super grateful. Thank you, my dear brother Claude, and thank you, our dear queen Nadine. Until next time, and to all our viewers around the world, we are truly grateful that you were able to follow the program. And please, next time we will be sure to read and to actually mention your feedbacks. But nonetheless, we actually keep them. We will give you feedbacks, but we prefer to do that in air. So until next time, thank you so much. We are super grateful, and take it away, studio.